The sun was slowly sinking behind the wide open fields, painting the ranch in soft shades of gold and orange. The gentle wind carried the smell of hay and earth, and the quiet clatter of the cattle in the distance filled the air. The rancher, a giant of a man, was finishing his day by checking on the last of his herd. He was known in town for his size and strength, a man who could lift things most people could not even imagine. But despite his tough appearance, there was a calm in his actions, a carefulness that came from years of hard work and experience. He enjoyed these quiet moments alone with his ranch, as the sun dipped lower and the world seemed to slow down. Just as he was about to lock the barn and head inside, a small, urgent knock echoed from the front gate. The sound was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried a weight that made him pause. He looked up and saw a tiny figure standing there, a little girl no more than 8 years old. Her clothes were worn and dusty. Her small shoes barely protected her feet from the rough path she had walked. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears, and her small hands clutched a tattered doll. She looked so small and fragile against the giant frame of the rancher that for a moment he could not speak. "They beaten my mama. She is dying," she said, her voice trembling but urgent. Each word seemed to carry all the fear and desperation of someone far too young to face such horrors. The rancher's heart tightened. He had heard of trouble in town before, but the raw fear in this child's voice made it immediate, personal. He knelt slightly to meet her eyes, his voice calm but firm. "Where is she? Tell me exactly what happened." The little girl, shaking and sobbing, began to explain. Her words came in short bursts between tears. She told him about the men who had come into their home, how they had hit her mother and stolen a few things. She spoke of how she had hidden in a small corner, terrified and helpless, but she had run as soon as she saw a chance, hoping someone strong would come to help. Her words painted a picture of fear, chaos, and pain that no child should ever witness. The rancher's mind raced as he processed the story. He had faced dangers on his ranch before, storms, wild animals, even thieves, but this was different. This was a human threat to someone completely innocent. His jaw tightened and he felt a surge of determination. Without a second thought, he grabbed his truck keys and motioned for the girl to follow him. She climbed into the passenger seat and he started the engine, the truck rumbling over the dusty road. The girl's small hands clutched the seat, her eyes still wide with fear, but she trusted him. As they drove, the girl told him more about the men. They were not strangers. She recognized them from around town. They had been stealing and hurting people in secret, preying on those who could not defend themselves. The rancher listened carefully, asking questions about what they looked like, where they had gone, and how long ago it happened. Each detail was important, and he kept his focus, knowing that the more he understood, the better he could protect the mother and catch the men responsible. Despite the tension, he spoke to the girl gently, trying to soothe her. "It's okay," he said. "I'm here now. I will make sure your mama is safe." His deep voice, calm and steady, seemed to give her some small comfort. She nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She was exhausted from running and crying, but she felt a strange sense of hope with this giant man driving her through the empty roads. The rancher's thoughts were a mix of concern and strategy. He knew he had to act fast. The mother could be seriously hurt, and the longer they waited, the worse it could get. But he also knew he had to be careful. The men might still be nearby. He needed to ensure the safety of the little girl, her mother, and himself while confronting a dangerous situation. His eyes scanned the horizon as he drove, looking for any sign of trouble, any clue that might indicate where the men had gone or where the mother might be. When they finally reached the small house at the edge of town, the sight was worse than he had imagined. The front door was broken, splintered wood hanging from the frame. The windows were cracked and signs of struggle were evident everywhere. It was clear that the house had been violently entered. The rancher felt a knot in his stomach as he saw the mother lying on the floor inside. Her clothes were torn, her face bruised, and she tried to move when she saw him, but weakness and pain made her fall back. The rancher did not hesitate. He approached her carefully, speaking softly to calm both her and the little girl. He gently lifted the mother, holding her with surprising ease despite her weight. His strength was balanced with care, making sure he did not hurt her further. The girl ran alongside, holding onto his arm, her trust in him absolute. The neighbors, who had started to gather outside, watched in astonishment. No one had expected such a massive man to act with such precision and gentleness. As he carried the mother to his truck, He instructed the girl to keep talking to her mother. "Tell her it's okay, that we are taking her to get help," he said. The girl nodded, her small voice whispering words of comfort, telling her mother that she was safe now. The rancher started the truck and drove off toward the nearest hospital, keeping his eyes on the road but his mind fully aware of the urgency of the situation. The drive was tense. The little girl kept glancing at her mother, whose eyes were half closed and filled with pain. She whispered encouragements and reassured her that help was coming. The rancher occasionally glanced at them, his face serious but his voice calm. He talked about everyday things, small stories about the ranch to distract the girl and give her some relief from the fear. He had learned that even in moments of crisis, a few words of normalcy could help people hold on to hope. By the time they reached the hospital, the sun had fully set, leaving the sky a deep blue dotted with early stars. The rancher lifted the mother out of the truck again and rushed inside, calling for immediate assistance. Doctors and nurses quickly took over, and the rancher stepped back, keeping the little girl close. He waited in the lobby, his large frame filling the space, but his eyes never left the mother as she was rushed into the emergency room. Hours passed slowly, each tick of the clock filled with tension. The girl, exhausted and frightened, sat beside him, still holding his hand tightly. He spoke softly, telling her small stories, asking her questions about school, her friends, and even the doll she had brought with her. Anything to keep her calm and give her something other than fear to focus on. The rancher had faced many challenges in his life, but nothing compared to this. The raw helplessness of the child, the fear for her mother, and the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Finally, a doctor came out. The rancher's eyes met his, waiting for news. The doctor explained that the mother had sustained serious injuries but would survive. Relief washed over the rancher, but he knew the danger was not entirely over. The men who had attacked her were still at large, and he wanted to ensure that justice would be served. He promised the girl that he would not let anything happen to her or her mother again. Her small face brightened slightly at his words, hope replacing some of the fear. The rancher stayed with the little girl through the night, watching her as she finally fell asleep in a chair beside him. He felt a protective instinct unlike anything he had experienced before. The evening had begun quietly on his ranch, with nothing but the calm of nature around him. Now it had turned into a mission of courage, care, and action. He understood that this small girl's trust in him was not something he could take lightly. She had risked everything by coming to him, and he would not let her down. By the time the first light of morning broke through the hospital windows, the rancher had made plans. He knew he would need to confront the men responsible and make sure they could not harm anyone else. But for now he focused on the mother and daughter, ensuring they were safe, reassured, and cared for. He realized that being strong was not just about size or power. It was about courage, compassion, and acting decisively when someone is in desperate need. And as the little girl slept, clutching her tattered doll, he silently promised himself that he would do whatever it took to protect them. This night had changed him just as it had changed them. A giant of a man had become their shield, and the bond of trust had already begun to form, strong enough to face whatever challenges were yet to come. The morning sun spilled softly through the hospital windows, casting long beams of light over the waiting room. The little girl stirred, blinking her eyes open and looking around nervously. Her mother had been taken into surgery the night before, and the anxiety in her small heart was still strong. The giant rancher sitting beside her gently took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. He spoke softly, trying to calm her trembling. "She is in good hands. The doctors know what to do. Everything will be fine." The girl nodded slowly, her small lips quivering. She had never been away from her mother in such a terrifying situation before. The rancher could see how deeply she had worried through the long night. He knew that his job was not only to protect her physically, but to give her hope and courage. So he kept talking, sharing little stories about his ranch, the animals, and the quiet moments of nature that he loved. The girl listened, her small grip on his hand slowly loosening as she felt some calm for the first time since the attack. Hours passed, and the waiting room gradually filled with other patients and visitors. Despite the normal hospital bustle, the rancher kept his focus on the little girl. He asked her about her school, her favorite games, and even her tattered doll, which she had brought with her everywhere. Talking about small everyday things gave her a sense of normalcy, a break from the fear and chaos she had endured. She even managed a small smile when he shared a funny story about a cow that had wandered into the wrong pen the week before. Finally, a nurse emerged from the surgery area, her face calm but serious. She approached the rancher and the girl carrying a clipboard. "The mother is stable now," she said. "She is still weak and will need rest and observation, but she will recover. Her injuries were serious, but she is strong and she is safe now." Relief flooded the rancher's face. He nodded solemnly, feeling the weight of the night's events lift slightly. He bent down to whisper to the girl, who clung to him, her eyes wide. "She is going to be okay. You were brave to come for her." The girl's small face lit up, a mix of tears and a relieved smile. She squeezed his hand tightly, almost afraid he might disappear. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice, soft and shaky, carried the weight of gratitude and awe. The rancher ruffled her hair gently, feeling the incredible responsibility of keeping both mother and daughter safe. He knew the danger wasn't entirely over. The men who had attacked them might still be at large, but for now, they were safe, and that was the most important thing. After a while, the rancher helped the little girl into a chair beside her mother's hospital bed. The mother, still weak and bruised, opened her eyes and saw the rancher's massive frame standing protectively nearby. She tried to sit up but winced in pain, and he gently guided her back, speaking softly. "Take it easy. You are safe now." The mother's eyes filled with gratitude, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. Thank you for bringing us here." The rancher nodded, keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. "I need to make sure no one harms you again," he said. "I will do everything I can to protect you both." His voice was calm but firm, carrying a strength that seemed to fill the room. The little girl clutched her mother's hand, feeling the protective presence of the giant man beside them. She had never imagined someone could be so strong, so kind, and so fearless at the same time. As the day moved on, the rancher began to gather information. He spoke quietly to the hospital staff, asking about any police involvement and whether the men responsible had been identified. He learned that the attackers were part of a small group that had been causing trouble in the town, preying on vulnerable families. The rancher's brow furrowed. He was not a man to sit idly while injustice happened. He knew he had to act. He gently guided the mother and daughter through their questions, making sure they understood that they were now safe. He explained that the police were involved and that he would help ensure the men could not hurt anyone else. The little girl's eyes widened. "Will they come back?" she asked, her voice small and worried. The rancher shook his head firmly. "No, not while I am around. I promise you they will not hurt you again." The day passed slowly, with the rancher remaining by their side, offering comfort, protection, and reassurance. He helped the mother with small needs, bringing water, adjusting pillows, and making sure she was comfortable. He encouraged the girl to draw pictures, tell stories, and even talk about her favorite animals on the ranch. Each small distraction helped her forget, even for a moment, the fear that had driven her to seek help the night before. By evening, the mother was able to sit up a little more, her strength slowly returning. She looked at the rancher, admiration and gratitude shining in her eyes. "You didn't have to help us," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "But you did. You saved us." The rancher shrugged, a faint smile on his face. It was the right thing to do. "No one deserves to be hurt like that." I couldn't just stand by. The little girl, now calmer, leaned against the rancher's side. "You're like a giant hero," she whispered, her words full of awe. The rancher chuckled softly, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. He had faced many challenges in his life, but the trust and admiration of this small child, combined with the relief of seeing her mother safe, made this moment unforgettable. Even as they rested in the hospital, the rancher's mind worked ahead. He knew he could not just rely on the police to handle everything. He needed to gather evidence, track down the attackers, and ensure they could not hurt anyone else. He spoke quietly to the mother, explaining that they would work together to make sure justice was served. She nodded weakly, knowing she could rely on him. Throughout the night, he stayed close, keeping a watchful eye on both of them. The little girl occasionally stirred, calling softly for her mother, and he gently reassured her each time. He knew that safety was not just about protection from physical harm. It was also about offering emotional security. By being present, strong, and calm, he gave them both a sense of hope that had been missing before. The next morning, after another night of careful observation, The mother's strength had returned enough for her to speak more clearly. She told the rancher about the fear and helplessness she had felt, about how she never imagined anyone would come to their aid. The rancher listened patiently, offering comfort and nods of understanding. He reassured her that her bravery, combined with her daughter's courage to seek help, had brought them both to safety. The little girl, now full of energy despite the past ordeal, clung to the rancher as they discussed plans for the coming days. He explained that they would work together to report everything to the authorities, and that he would personally ensure the attackers were found and held accountable. Her eyes widened with hope, seeing that someone so big, strong, and capable had taken their side. As they prepared to leave the hospital for a short visit back to their temporary safe place, the rancher helped the mother into his truck once again. The girl climbed in beside her, her small face showing a mixture of relief and excitement. They drove slowly through the quiet streets, the early sunlight casting soft shadows. Neighbors watched with curiosity as the giant rancher, the little girl, and her mother passed by. People began to whisper about the man who had come to the aid of a family in danger, amazed at his courage and determination. During the drive, the rancher spoke to the girl about the importance of staying brave and united. He explained that even though they had faced danger, they had survived and were now safe. He encouraged her to help her mother recover and to always remember that courage could come in many forms, not just size and strength, but also love, care, and determination. She listened intently, her small hand resting on his arm for reassurance. By the time they reached a small, secure home arranged for them, the girl and her mother felt a sense of calm and safety for the first time in days. The rancher helped them inside, arranging their belongings and making sure everything was comfortable. He promised that he would continue to check on them, to protect them, and to help bring justice. The mother and daughter looked at him with gratitude and awe, knowing that without his intervention, the outcome could have been very different. And as the day came to an end, the little girl sat quietly beside her recovering mother, thinking about the giant rancher who had come into their lives. He had changed everything, bringing hope, safety, and a promise that they would not face fear alone again. The rancher stood outside for a moment, looking at the setting sun and the fields around him, thinking about the work still ahead. The attackers had to be stopped, and he would ensure that justice was served. But for now, he allowed himself a small moment of relief, knowing that the first and most important step had been taken. Both mother and daughter were alive, safe, and beginning to heal. The next morning, the rancher returned to the little girl and her mother at their safe temporary home. The mother was sitting up on the couch, still weak but showing more strength than the previous day. The girl ran to him as soon as he arrived, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "Are you okay, Mama?" she asked, glancing anxiously at her mother. The rancher knelt beside them, his large hands resting gently on the mother's shoulders. "You are getting stronger," he said. "That is good, but we still have to make sure the people who hurt you cannot come back." The mother nodded, her face pale but determined. "I want them to pay for what they did," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet strength. The rancher's eyes narrowed. He had spent his life protecting the land and the people around him, but now he realized this situation required more than just presence. These men had to be stopped. He began to ask the mother questions, wanting to know everything she could remember about the attackers, their faces, the way they spoke, where they had been going. The little girl watched intently, listening to the conversation. Even at her young age, she understood the seriousness of what was happening. She felt a mixture of fear and hope. Fear because she knew they had been hurt, and the men were still out there, and hope because she could see that the rancher was determined to make things right. She clutched her mother's hand, leaning against her for reassurance. The rancher noticed her small gestures and felt a protective instinct even stronger than before. After gathering all the information, the rancher began to make a plan. He would not rush blindly. He had learned that careful thinking was just as important as action. First, he needed to find out where the attackers were hiding and what they were planning next. Using the details the mother had provided and his knowledge of the town, he began to track their possible movements. He visited familiar locations where such men often hid or gathered, speaking quietly with neighbors and other ranchers who might have seen them. The community responded to his careful approach. People who had been afraid to speak before now provided small tips and sightings. The rancher listened carefully, writing down each detail and piecing together a clearer picture of the attackers' locations. He kept the mother and daughter informed, explaining that they had nothing to fear as long as he was watching over them. The girl's eyes brightened slightly, trusting him completely. She had learned that he was not only strong but also smart, able to figure things out without rushing into danger. By midday, the rancher had gathered enough information to begin planning how to confront the attackers safely. He thought about the terrain, the distance, and the best way to ensure the men could not escape or cause more harm. He remembered the lessons from years on the ranch, how to anticipate movement, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to use one's presence to influence the situation. Every detail mattered, and he considered them all carefully. While preparing, he also spent time with the mother and daughter, making sure they were calm and comfortable. He explained that he would take action soon, but he wanted them to stay safe in their home. The mother nodded, understanding the seriousness but also feeling reassured by his presence. The girl, sensing the determination in his eyes, whispered, "Please be careful." The rancher smiled gently, ruffling her hair. "I always am. I will come back for you. You do not have to worry." Late in the afternoon, the rancher set out toward the area where the attackers were believed to be hiding. He moved quietly, using the knowledge of the land to his advantage. He watched from a distance, observing the movements of the men without being noticed. They were careless, unaware that someone was tracking them, someone who had the size, strength, and intelligence to confront them safely. The rancher noted each man, their behavior, and the possible escape routes. After several hours of careful observation, he returned to the mother and daughter to explain what he had learned. "They think they are safe," he said, his voice low but firm. "But we know where they are. Tomorrow we will make sure they cannot hurt anyone else." The little girl's eyes widened with both fear and anticipation. She could see that the rancher was serious, that he was not bluffing. The mother looked at him with gratitude and concern, understanding that the next step was dangerous but necessary. That night, the rancher did not rest. He stayed awake, reviewing all the details in his mind. He thought about possible challenges and how to overcome them. He planned the approach, the timing, and the way to ensure the attackers could be stopped without harming anyone else. Every scenario was considered. He was not reckless. He knew that careful planning could make the difference between success and failure. The little girl, tired from the day, fell asleep in her mother's arms. The rancher watched them for a moment, his heart heavy with responsibility but filled with determination. He had faced difficult situations before, but this was different. This was about protecting innocent lives, about ensuring justice for those who had been wronged. And he knew he could not fail. Morning came, and with it a clear determination. The rancher prepared himself for the confrontation. He checked his equipment, reviewed his plan once more, and made sure he had all the information he needed. He then drove to the location where the attackers were known to be hiding, moving carefully to avoid detection. His presence alone, a giant man moving with purpose and precision, was enough to unsettle those who were not expecting him. When he arrived, he observed the men from a safe distance. They were talking among themselves, unaware that their actions had been tracked and that someone capable of stopping them was nearby. The rancher took note of each man's position, identifying who was the leader and who were the followers. He planned how to approach them, how to use his size and presence to control the situation, and how to make sure they could not escape or cause further harm. After careful observation, he moved closer, his large frame hidden behind natural cover. He waited for the right moment, knowing that patience was key. The men were careless, and that gave him the advantage. He called the local authorities discreetly, providing them with the location and details. The police were surprised but grateful for the information, understanding that the rancher's tracking and observation had made it possible to plan a safe arrest. Finally, with everything in place, he stepped out from his cover. His presence alone was imposing, and the men froze, unsure of who this giant figure was. The rancher spoke firmly, making it clear that they were caught. He instructed them to stay put until the police arrived. The men, realizing they had been outsmarted and trapped, complied, their confidence gone. The rancher's careful planning, his intelligence, and his strength had succeeded without a single person being harmed. By mid-morning, the authorities arrived and took the attackers into custody. The rancher had ensured that the operation was successful, that justice would be served, and that no further harm could come to the mother, the little girl, or anyone else in town. He returned to their home, knowing that his role was not yet finished but feeling a sense of relief that the immediate danger was over. The little girl ran to him as he arrived, her small arms wrapping around his leg. "Did you stop them?" she asked, her voice full of awe and hope. The rancher knelt beside her, smiling gently. "Yes, they will not hurt anyone anymore. You and your mother are safe." The mother looked at him with gratitude, her eyes shining. "We can never thank you enough," she said softly. The rancher shook his head. "No thanks needed. I just did what had to be done." For the first time in days, the little girl and her mother could breathe without fear. They knew that the giant rancher had not only protected them, but had ensured that the people who had hurt them would face the consequences. The sense of safety and relief began to fill the home, and the bond between the rancher and the family grew stronger. He had become more than a protector. He had become a symbol of courage, strength, and justice. After the attackers were taken into custody, the rancher returned to the little girl and her mother, who were waiting anxiously in their temporary safe home. The mother was still weak, but the color in her face had returned slightly and she could sit up with less effort. The little girl ran to meet him, her small hands clutching his large arm. "Are they gone?" she asked, her voice trembling but filled with hope. The rancher knelt beside her, his eyes calm and steady. "Yes, they will not hurt you or your mother anymore. The police have them now, and justice will be done." The mother looked at him with tears in her eyes, her gratitude overwhelming. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice soft but earnest. "You saved our lives. You protected us when no one else could." The rancher shook his head, ruffling the little girl's hair gently. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what any person should do, protect those who cannot protect themselves." His calm words reassured them, but his mind was still focused on making sure nothing more could go wrong. He knew that even though the immediate danger had passed, the family needed continued support. The mother could not return to her home yet, and the little girl needed a sense of stability and security. The rancher spent the rest of the day helping them settle into their temporary home. He brought in food, blankets, and basic supplies, making sure everything was comfortable. He explained to them that he would continue to check on them until they were completely safe. The little girl, exhausted from the tension of the past few days, finally relaxed in his presence. The next day, the rancher accompanied the mother and daughter to the police station. They gave statements about the attack, describing the men and the events that had taken place. The little girl, despite her age, spoke clearly and bravely, recounting what she had seen and heard. The police were impressed by her courage and the detailed information she provided. The mother also spoke, giving a full account of the attack. Throughout the process, the rancher stayed close, offering support and ensuring that both felt safe during the sometimes intimidating environment of the police station. After completing the statements, the rancher spoke privately with the officers. He provided them with additional details he had observed while tracking the men, sharing insights that could help ensure they were held accountable. The police listened carefully, recognizing that the rancher's intelligence, patience, and careful planning had played a major role in capturing the attackers. They promised to do everything necessary to ensure the men faced full justice. The rancher nodded, satisfied that his efforts were contributing to a larger sense of safety for the town. Returning to the temporary home, the rancher focused on the mother's recovery. He helped her with small tasks she found difficult and encouraged her to rest. He explained to the little girl that her mother needed time to heal, and that she could help by being brave and patient. The girl listened carefully, nodding, her eyes filled with determination. She had already seen how the rancher faced challenges without fear, and she wanted to be strong too for her mother. Over the next few days, the rancher continued to support the family. He checked in regularly, bringing food, supplies, and encouraging words. He also coordinated with the authorities to ensure that the attackers were monitored and would not be able to threaten anyone again. The mother and daughter began to feel a sense of normalcy return, their fear gradually replaced by trust and gratitude. The little girl, once terrified, now played in the yard near the rancher, occasionally looking up at him with admiration. One afternoon, while the mother rested, the rancher took the little girl aside. "You have been very brave," he said. "Your courage helped bring your mother to safety. Never forget that strength comes in many forms, not just in size or power, but in heart and determination. The girl looked up at him, eyes wide, absorbing his words. She nodded slowly, realizing that even someone small could make a difference when they were brave. Meanwhile, the rancher stayed in contact with the authorities, ensuring that the legal process moved smoothly. He provided testimony, shared evidence, and helped clarify the sequence of events. The police appreciated his cooperation and detailed observations, recognizing that his involvement had been crucial in preventing the attackers from escaping or causing more harm. His dedication impressed not only the officers but also the local community, who began to hear of his actions and courage. As the family's confidence grew, the rancher also helped them consider longer-term safety. He arranged for locks and basic security measures at their home, making sure that the mother and daughter could feel secure even after he was not present. He explained the importance of awareness and careful planning to avoid danger, teaching the little girl small lessons in observation and caution, all in a way that did not frighten her but helped her feel empowered. Throughout this time, the mother recovered steadily. The bruises faded and she regained her strength. She expressed her gratitude to the rancher repeatedly, her words sincere and heartfelt. "You gave us more than safety," she said one evening. "You gave us hope, and that is more important than anything." The rancher smiled quietly, knowing that his actions had made a real difference. He had not only protected them but had also restored a sense of trust and faith in humanity. The little girl's laughter began to return, a sound that warmed the rancher's heart. She played outside with small toys, sometimes racing across the yard, sometimes stopping to run to him for a word of encouragement. He watched her carefully, ensuring she remained safe while letting her experience joy and freedom again. He understood that recovery was not only physical but emotional, and seeing her smile was a reward far greater than any recognition or praise. Neighbors began to notice the changes as well. They saw the little girl running freely and the mother recovering steadily. People whispered about the giant rancher who had intervened, amazed at his courage and his dedication. Some approached him to offer thanks. Others simply observed quietly, inspired by his example. He did not seek recognition. He acted because it was the right thing to do. Still, the admiration of the community reinforced the impact of his actions. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the rancher sat with the mother and daughter on the porch of their temporary home. The air was warm, filled with the sounds of nature and the distant cattle. The mother reached out and held his hand, her eyes filled with emotion. "We can never repay you," she said softly. The rancher shook his head. "You don't need to. Seeing you safe and healthy is enough." The little girl leaned against him, her small arms wrapped around his leg, feeling a sense of security she had not known before. In the following weeks, the rancher continued to monitor the situation closely. He coordinated with the authorities, checked in on the family regularly, and ensured that the attackers were fully held accountable. The mother and daughter began to regain a sense of normal life, their fear replaced by trust, hope, and a feeling of safety. The little girl began to attend school again, her small backpack bouncing on her shoulders as she walked with a sense of confidence, knowing that she was protected. By the time the legal process concluded, the attackers had been arrested and were facing justice for their actions. The community recognized the importance of the rancher's intervention, understanding that without him, the outcome could have been far worse. The mother and daughter were finally able to return to a stable routine, their lives no longer overshadowed by fear. Through it all, the bond between the rancher and the family grew stronger. He had not only provided physical protection, but also emotional support, teaching courage, hope, and resilience. The little girl looked up to him with admiration, and her mother regarded him with gratitude that could not be measured in words. He had changed their lives in ways they would never forget, proving that true strength lies in action, compassion, and the courage to stand up for those who cannot defend themselves. Even after the attackers were gone, the rancher remained a steady presence in their lives. He visited regularly, helped with chores, shared stories, and offered guidance. The little girl's laughter and the mother's steady recovery were living proof that his efforts had made a lasting difference. The community learned from his example, realizing that courage and kindness could inspire hope and change lives. And in the quiet evenings, as the sun set over the fields and the rancher watched over the mother and daughter, he knew that the most important battles were not always fought with fists or weapons, They were fought with determination, wisdom, and a heart willing to protect the innocent. He had faced the danger, guided the family to safety, and ensured that justice would be served. In doing so, he had given them something far greater than safety, the belief that even in the darkest moments, hope, courage, and goodness could prevail. The weeks after the attackers were arrested brought a slow but steady return of peace to the little girl and her mother. The mother, once weak and bruised, regained her strength day by day. She could walk without assistance, cook meals, and care for her daughter again. Each small improvement filled the girl's heart with joy, and she would run to her mother, hugging her tightly whenever she could. The rancher continued to visit regularly, not because he had to, but because he wanted to ensure they felt safe and supported during this transition. The little girl had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Her fear and anxiety were replaced with confidence and courage. She played outside, ran errands, and even helped with small chores under the rancher's watchful eye. He taught her lessons not only about safety, but also about responsibility, care, and observing the world carefully. She listened intently, absorbing every word and action, understanding that strength came in many forms. The bond between the rancher and the girl had grown into something strong and unbreakable, a mixture of trust, respect, and admiration. The mother, too, was profoundly grateful. She often expressed her thanks, her voice filled with emotion. "You saved us not just with your strength, but with your heart," she said one evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set behind the fields. The rancher smiled quietly, shaking his head. "I did what anyone should do," he replied. "You are alive, and that is what matters most." She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "No one else could have done what you did. You are more than a protector. You are our guardian." The rancher's large hands rested gently on her shoulders. "And I will always be here if you need me," he said simply. The community, too, had noticed the difference the rancher had made. Word spread of his courage, intelligence, and compassion. People who had once been cautious or fearful now spoke openly about his bravery and how he had taken action when others hesitated. Neighbors came forward, offering small gifts, kind words, or just a nod of respect as they passed. The little girl's story, and the rancher's intervention, became an example of hope and humanity for the entire town. With the attackers safely behind bars, the family began planning their return to a more normal life. The rancher helped them secure their home, making repairs to the door and windows and installing simple security measures to ensure no one could threaten them again. The mother and daughter were involved in the process, learning about small steps they could take to protect themselves. The rancher explained each detail patiently, never making them feel weak or incapable, but instead empowering them with knowledge and confidence. The little girl was especially eager to help. She would fetch tools, carry small supplies, and even help her mother organize things around the house. The rancher encouraged her every step of the way, praising her efforts and showing her that her contributions mattered. She was learning that bravery was not only about facing danger, but also about persistence, caring for others, and taking responsibility for one's actions. One afternoon, as they were organizing the home, the mother spoke to the rancher with a thoughtful expression. "I sometimes wonder how we would have survived without you," she said softly. The rancher paused, considering her words. "You survived because of your courage, and she survived because she never gave up," he replied, gesturing to the little girl. "I only helped guide and protect. The real strength was always with you." The mother nodded, understanding the truth in his words, and the girl's eyes widened with pride and recognition. Life slowly returned to a rhythm. The little girl went back to school, her small backpack bouncing on her shoulders as she walked with a new sense of confidence. She told her friends about what had happened in small bits, careful not to frighten them, but enough to share the bravery she had experienced. Her mother focused on recovery, regaining her independence and preparing to return to work. The rancher remained a quiet presence, checking in regularly, offering guidance, and ensuring that the family felt safe in every aspect of their lives. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, the rancher and the little girl sat outside watching the horizon. "I never thought I would meet someone like you," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. The rancher looked down at her, his large frame looming but his expression gentle. "And I never thought I would have the honor to help someone so brave," he replied. The little girl smiled, her small face bright with admiration and trust. In that moment, the bond they had formed felt unbreakable, a connection forged through courage, care, and shared experience. The mother, observing them from the porch, felt a deep sense of gratitude. She understood that her family had been saved not only by physical strength, but by compassion, intelligence, and unwavering determination. She had learned that true courage often comes from unexpected places, and that even the strongest people act out of love and care as much as necessity. The rancher continued to guide the family in small ways. He helped the mother set up a safe routine for their home, taught the little girl small lessons about awareness, and encouraged both to pursue a life filled with confidence and hope. He emphasized that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Each day, the little girl grew more confident, more resilient, and more aware of the world around her. As time passed, the family regained a sense of normalcy. They laughed together, shared meals, and celebrated small victories. The little girl ran through the fields near the ranch, sometimes stopping to wave at the rancher who watched her with a sense of pride. The mother returned to her work, strong and independent, grateful for every step of recovery. They had endured a terrifying ordeal, but with courage, help, and determination, they had emerged stronger than before. The town, too, began to recognize the importance of bravery and community support. Neighbors who had once been hesitant now spoke openly about helping one another, inspired by the example set by the rancher. People understood that standing up for others, protecting the vulnerable, and acting with courage could change lives. The story of the little girl, her mother, and the giant rancher became a symbol of hope, reminding everyone that even in the darkest times, there are people willing to act with kindness and strength. The rancher visited regularly, not seeking recognition but ensuring that the family knew they were supported. He offered guidance, assistance, and reassurance whenever needed. The little girl, once terrified and trembling, now ran freely in his presence, confident that he would always be there if danger returned. The mother, fully recovered, expressed her thanks often, though the rancher reminded her that their safety and happiness were reward enough. One quiet evening, as the three sat together on the porch, the mother spoke softly, her voice filled with emotion. "You gave us more than protection. You gave us hope, courage, and a second chance," she said. The little girl nodded, her eyes wide with admiration. The rancher simply smiled, resting his hands on his knees. "I only did what anyone should do," he said. "The rest was always in you." The little girl leaned against him, feeling safe and strong. She had learned that courage is not always about size or power, but about acting to help others, standing firm in the face of fear, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The mother, too, understood that the true measure of strength is not just in physical ability, but in heart, determination, and compassion. As the sun set behind the fields, painting the sky in beautiful colors, the rancher looked at the mother and daughter. He felt a sense of peace knowing that they were safe, strong, and ready to face the world. The attackers were gone, justice had been served, and the family had learned to trust, hope, and find courage in themselves. The rancher's presence had made all the difference, not just through his strength, but through his wisdom, care, and unwavering dedication. In the end, the little girl and her mother thrived. They rebuilt their lives stronger and braver than before. The community remembered the giant rancher who had entered their lives at the right moment, not only to protect but to inspire. And for the family, he was more than a hero. He was a guardian, a teacher, and a symbol of courage that would never be forgotten. Even as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the bond they shared remained unbroken. The little girl continued to grow, confident and joyful, knowing that bravery and kindness could change lives. The mother lived with gratitude and renewed strength, aware of how much love and care could shape the world around her. And the rancher, quiet but vigilant, watched over them, a reminder that true courage is shown not only in strength, but in the willingness to act for others, no matter the risk. Their story became a beacon in the town, a tale of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary impact one person can have. It reminded everyone that in moments of fear and uncertainty, courage, compassion, and action can create a lasting difference. And for the little girl and her mother, it meant everything. They had survived, healed, and learned that even in the darkest moments, hope and goodness could always prevail.